Microsoft Certified Azure Fundamentals, or AZ-900, is the focus of this week's Monday Certified feature from Bare Metal Cyber Magazine. If you are early in your IT or cybersecurity career, or trying to break into the field from somewhere else, this certification often shows up as one of the most approachable ways to start learning cloud in a structured way. That does not mean it is trivial, and it does not mean it turns you into a cloud engineer overnight. What it does mean is that it gives you a practical introduction to how Azure works, how cloud services are organized, and how to think about the platform in a way that prepares you for real-world conversations and better next steps.
If this certification is on your study list, a free and complete audio course is available in the Bare Metal Cyber Academy at baremetalcyber.com, complete with a study guide and a second ebook featuring 1,000 flashcard questions. AZ-900 sits in an important place because cloud is no longer a niche topic. Even people who are not full-time cloud administrators now run into cloud-based systems, identity platforms, hosted services, compliance questions, and shared responsibility decisions. Help desk staff see it, junior analysts see it, system administrators see it, security teams definitely see it. So even though AZ-900 is called a fundamental certification, the value is not just in the word fundamentals. The value is that it helps you build a working mental map of a major cloud platform before you try to specialize.
Microsoft Certified Azure Fundamentals is a Microsoft certification, which matters because Azure is one of the major cloud platforms used across government, enterprise, education, and the private sector. When a candidate earns AZ-900, the signal is not that they are ready to design everything from scratch or manage a complex production environment on their own. The signal is that they understand the basic language of Azure and can start participating in cloud-related discussions with more clarity and confidence. For many early career professionals, that is exactly the kind of signal that helps.
This certification is especially well suited for people who are still building their foundation. Maybe you are working in desktop support and trying to move towards systems or cloud. Maybe you are a junior cybersecurity professional who keeps hearing about identity, governance, and cloud security, but wants a better grasp of the environment those ideas live in. Maybe you are changing careers and want a first certification that is recognizable, practical, and less intimidating than a role-based engineering exam. Those are all solid reasons to look at AZ-900.
It is also useful to understand what AZ-900 is not. It is not a deep administrator certification. It is not an architect-level credential. It is not meant to prove that you can deploy and run every Azure service in an enterprise environment. That matters because a lot of people either underestimate the exam or expect the wrong thing from it. The better way to view it is as a foundation cert that teaches you how the pieces fit together so you can make smarter choices about what to learn next.
When people hear the word fundamentals, they sometimes assume the exam is mostly about memorizing a pile of product names. There is some memory involved, of course, because you need to recognize Azure service categories and understand what they are for. But the exam really tests whether you can connect concepts. It asks whether you understand what cloud computing changes compared with traditional on-premises thinking, whether you can identify the purpose of core Azure services, whether you understand governance and pricing at a high level, and whether you can reason through straightforward scenarios using the right kind of cloud logic. That means the exam tends to reward broad understanding more than deep technical execution. You should know concepts like scalability, availability, elasticity, and shared responsibility. You should understand that identity, policy, governance, cost, and compliance are not side issues in cloud. They are part of the operating model. You should also be able to look at a service category and understand the kind of business or technical problem it is meant to solve. That is different from being asked to configure the service in detail.
A good way to think about the major areas of the exam is to break them into plain language questions. What is cloud, and why do organizations use it? What are the main types of Azure services, and what jobs do they do? How do organizations organize, secure, govern and monitor resources in Azure? How do pricing, support, and service choices affect decision-making? If you can answer those kinds of questions clearly, you are moving in the right direction.
One reason AZ-900 is valuable for cybersecurity learners is that cloud changes how security conversations happen. Identity is central. Governance matters early. Access control, monitoring, data handling, and shared responsibility all become part of the baseline discussion. Even at a fundamentals level, AZ-900 helps you see that cloud security is not something bolted on at the end. It is built into how the platform is used, managed, and controlled from the beginning.
Another reason the certification carries weight is the organization behind it. Microsoft is one of the best-known technology companies in the world, and its products are deeply embedded in the environments many professionals work in every day. Azure sits inside a much larger Microsoft ecosystem that includes identity, collaboration, device management, security tools, and enterprise productivity platforms. Because of that, even a fundamental certification from Microsoft can have practical career value. It shows you have started to learn a platform that employers already care about.
Within Microsoft's broader certification ecosystem, AZ-900 works like a front door. It gives people a place to start before they move into more technical and role-based paths. That is one of its biggest strengths. It is accessible without being meaningless. It gives you a manageable first milestone without forcing you to choose a specialization too early. And for people who need a confidence-building first step, that matters a lot.
Preparing for the exam is usually easier when you stop thinking about it as a giant cloud problem and start thinking about it as a structured learning sequence. First, build the conceptual foundation. Learn what cloud computing means, what the shared responsibility model is, and why organizations use cloud services in the first place. Get comfortable with the basic vocabulary. If those terms feel fuzzy, the rest of the exam will feel harder than it needs to.
Next, move into service awareness. You do not need to become deeply technical to pass AZ-900, but you do need to understand the major categories of Azure services and the roles they play. Think in terms of purpose. Which services are about compute? Which are about storage? Which relate to networking, identity, databases, governance, or monitoring? That purpose-based approach is usually more effective than trying to memorize disconnected names.
After that, spend time on management, governance, pricing, and support concepts. These are areas that some technical beginners ignore because they sound less exciting than the services themselves. That is a mistake. AZ-900 is partly a business-aware cloud fundamentals exam, and Microsoft wants candidates to understand that cloud decisions are not only about technology. Cost models, governance structures, service agreements, and support options matter because they shape how organizations actually adopt and manage the platform.
Question practice should come later in the process, not first. Practice questions are useful because they show you where your understanding is weak. They are less useful when treated like a shortcut. If you repeatedly miss questions about identity, that does not just mean you got the answer wrong. It means your conceptual picture of identity in Azure needs more work. If you mix up service categories, it means you need a cleaner mental map. Use question practice to diagnose, then go back and reinforce the concept. For most busy professionals, shorter and steadier study works better than marathon sessions. AZ-900 is the kind of exam where repeated exposure helps. Review cloud concepts, revisit service categories, and keep circling back to weak areas until they start to feel familiar. Confidence on this exam often comes from recognition. You want to reach the point where the topic sounds known, not foreign. That kind of familiarity is built over time, not in one panicked weekend.
This is also where the Bare Metal Cyber Academy can fit naturally into the study plan. The free audio course developed by Bare Metal Cyber is useful for repeated exposure when you are commuting, walking, or doing routine tasks.
The study guide gives you a more focused and organized way to review the ideas in one place. The flashcards ebook can help with terminology, category recognition, and quick reinforcement when you need short study bursts. For people with jobs, responsibilities, and limited time, that combination can make a real difference because it supports flexible learning instead of forcing everything into one format.
It also helps to manage expectations about difficulty. Some candidates underestimate AZ-900 because it is a fundamentals exam and assume they can wing it. Others see the cloud branding and talk themselves into thinking it is more intimidating than it really is. A better mindset is to take it seriously without making it dramatic. It is a broad exam, but it is meant to test entry-level understanding. If you stay organized, cover the major concepts, and review your weak points honestly, it becomes much more manageable.
From a career standpoint, AZ-900 is best understood as a foundation that supports direction rather than specialization. It can help strengthen a resume for early career IT roles, junior cloud-aware positions, support jobs in Microsoft-heavy environments, and security paths where cloud literacy matters. Hiring managers generally do not look at AZ-900 and assume the candidate is ready to run enterprise Azure by themselves. But many do see it as evidence that the candidate is serious enough to learn the platform and build a base layer of knowledge in a major technology area.
That is an important distinction. In early career hiring, proof of direction often matters. Employers want to know that a candidate is not just interested in technology in a vague way, but is actually building towards something. AZ-900 can help show that. It says you have started learning cloud in a structured way. It says you can speak the language better than someone who has only skimmed blog posts or watched random videos. And for many readers, that makes it a useful first milestone. AZ-900 also fits nicely into a longer path. Someone interested in Azure administration might use it as a lead-in to more technical Microsoft certifications later. Someone interested in security might use it to build cloud context before studying more security-specific material. Someone still deciding between infrastructure, identity, cloud operations, or governance might use it to get oriented before choosing a lane. That flexibility is part of why the certification remains relevant.
At the same time, it is fair to say that AZ-900 is not the perfect next step for every person. If you are already working hands-on in Azure every day and have a strong working grasp of the platform, you may be ready for something more advanced. If your goal is a vendor-neutral understanding of cloud rather than Microsoft-specific grounding, you might compare it with broader cloud fundamentals options. But for early career professionals, career changers, and technical beginners who want a recognizable first credential tied to a major platform, AZ-900 is still a strong option. In the end, Microsoft-certified Azure Fundamentals gives you a practical way to understand the platform, the language, and the logic behind Azure without forcing you into expert-level depth too early. It works best for people who need structure, direction, and a clear first step into cloud. If that sounds like where you are right now, AZ-900 makes a lot of sense, and the Bare Metal Cyber Academy resources can help you turn that first step into a study plan that actually fits a real life. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.